Welcome to Unlocked, a new common sense platform that speaks Britain's language. I'm your host, Martin Daubney.
And I'm Belinda DeLucy. Today is episode 2 of Brexit Unlocked, and it's been another hugely eventful week as we approach our final 100 days under EU rule.
This week, the EU's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, turned his eyes on our Channel Island fisheries. Next, in her State of the Union speech, President Ursula von der Leyen laid out her dreams of a federalist superstate nightmare.
It's also been another week of American meddling. In an attempt to shore up the Irish-American vote, Democrat presidential candidate Joe Biden weaponised Anglo-Irish history to shore up his slipping in the polls. Biden threatened there would be no UK-US trade deal if the UK did not submit to EU jurisdiction in Northern Ireland.
Next, the EU's Darth Vader, Guy Verhofstadt, once again rattled his sabre, threatening to block a post-Brexit trade deal if Boris Johnson fails to come to heel. Will all of this push us towards a glorious WTO deal Brexit or a treacherous climb down?
It has been a week of devilish detail, so what better person to pick through that than today's first guest, Sir John Redwood MP. John is a Brexit don, Eurosceptic to the core. He is one of the happy few, the band of brothers
And sisters
who never voted for Theresa May's dreadful deal and paved the way for the Brexit that we all voted for. So, John, why were you the only Brexiteer who didn't buckle and sign the WA? And what's your assessment of where we're at right now?
Well, I think the withdrawal agreement under Mrs May was for a very different future relationship from the one that I and most Brexiteers had in mind. She moved from her initial position after the vote, which was more satisfactory, saying no deal is better than a bad deal, and implying that it would be different from being in the European Union, to a position where she said she wanted a comprehensive set of arrangements and agreements with the European Union that began to look rather like membership with all the obligations, but without a seat at the table to try and have any influence at all over what was going to be done to you. And so I and others said, this is not Brexit. Brexit means taking control of our laws, our borders, our money. Brexit means a self-governing independent country. We're quite happy to negotiate a free trade agreement and various other mutually beneficial arrangements with the European Union. But the tests must be, one, are we free to say yes or no to it? And two, is it better than simply just leaving? And much of Mrs May's agreement, to me, was clearly worse than just leaving.
Yes, that's very true. And what about Boris's WA? How did you feel about his deal?
Why did I go along with it and vote for it? Well, the only thing that made it possible for me to vote for it was the clear indication from the government reflected in the legislation that British sovereignty would be restored come what may. And it was the insertion of the very important clause drafted by Bill Cash into the legislation to implement the withdrawal agreement, which said with crystal clarity that notwithstanding anything in this agreement or treaty, the United Kingdom will be free to make its own decisions on all these matters, that satisfied me. And it was quite clear to me that the withdrawal agreement was only part of the negotiation. And the withdrawal agreement is very loosely drafted in many places. In parts, it's contradictory. In parts, it's ambiguous or muddled. And so why did I go along with it? Well, I understood that we needed to move on and we needed to see if we could have a proper negotiation to achieve a future relationship that we all liked. But I was also very conscious that we would have the option, because of that crucial clause in the agreement, to say no to everything and just become an independent third country, which would clearly be a good Brexit.
Well, thanks to Bill Cash for that one. Martin?
Yeah. So, John, yesterday you caused some beautiful mischief on Twitter when you tweeted that trade deals are nice to have, but not essential. Getting back full control of our laws, our money and borders is essential. Would you care to expand on that, please, sir?
Well, indeed. all the time we've been in the European Union, we've traded with a large number of important countries outside the European Union with no free trade agreement in place and with quite a lot of EU imposed tariffs. And yet that trade has grown more quickly than our trade with the European Union members. And it has prospered, particularly with countries like the United States of America and China, where not only was there no free trade agreement during our membership, but there isn't about to be a free trade agreement by the looks of it with the European Union. And even where the European Union got round to having a free trade agreement about the time we were leaving, I think perhaps our exit speeded some of it up. It isn't making a lot of difference to the trade patterns already established between the European Union and Japan, or the European Union and Canada, for example. So nice to have, it can add a little bit. But the bulk of the trade is there because there are willing buyers and willing sellers on both sides. We've got some services that America wants to buy. America's got some goods we want to buy, whatever. And that will happen and is allowed to happen under world trade rules. And once we have fully left the single market and customs union of the European Union at the end of this year, we, of course, could take all the tariffs down that get in the way of importing things more cheaply from the rest of the world, and that would be very good news. And I'm very pleased that the government's already set out a new tariff schedule with fewer things attracting tariffs and some lower tariffs, and let's go in that direction. Free trade can be promoted without having an actual free trade agreement.
This week, Guy Verhofstadt threatened there'd be no future trade deal if we didn't comply. Joe Biden waded in, saying there'd be no future trade deal if we compromise on Northern Ireland. Is this yet more Project Fear, John?
Well, from the European Union side, it most demonstrably is. I mean, they are the co-architects of Project Fear with a group of Remain politicians that were more numerous in the previous parliament than the current one. And I thought it was most interesting how the electorate worked that out in the general election and were very clear in their voting patterns, and where someone had been on the wrong side of this argument, trying to delay, dilute or overturn the result of the referendum, they were at great risk. A lot of them lost their seats, and it demonstrated once again that the majority of the British public meant what they said when they said we wish to leave the European Union. And they didn't have in mind some kind of surrogate membership or associate membership or some kind of colonial status under the powers of the European Union, but without vote and voice. They said, we want to be an independent country. And then, of course, once we've established that, the European Union will want to do deals with us. We'll need agreements that they want and we want, but we'll do so as an independent third country, just as today the United States of America or Canada can do deals with the European Union if they wish, or not if it doesn't suit.
Well, and in your blog today, John, you said the only past UK Prime Minister to have conducted a successful UK negotiation with the EU was Margaret Thatcher. What do you think Mrs. Thatcher would do today?
Well, the distinguishing characteristic of her excellent renegotiation of our money settlement was complete determination. And I remember it very well because I was an advisor to Margaret. And she was told by the official civil service and the UK establishment that what she wanted to do was breaking the law, that it was quite impossible, it was against the treaties. And in those days, of course, as a member of the European Union, we were fully under their law, and the ultimate sovereign power in our country was the European Court of Justice. But Margaret Thatcher just said, this is right. I know it is right that we get some of our money back. We are paying far too much in and getting too little back in return. And she ignored the fact that it would be a breaking of the treaties to withhold the money. The European Union thought she was serious. They were right, she was serious. And they were worried that she might simply withhold the payments and put them into a legal problem. And so they did the decent thing, and they gave her a pretty generous improvement on the dreadful settlement that Edward Heath had negotiated and the Labour government had endorsed when they took over in the 1970s. So I think it's about resolution, it's about determination. And of course, the establishment that likes the European Union will work with the European Union to try and make it difficult for any British negotiator. I think it's been dreadful the way leading politicians, particularly on the opposition benches in recent years, have worked very actively with the European Union to take their case and to undermine the British case at every available opportunity.
Well,
And I hope
wanted to
now
pick
they
you up
will
on
back
that.
off, and I hope now they will allow our Prime Minister full rein to conduct the negotiations in the way he wishes. I wish him success. Having a free trade agreement would be better than not having a free trade agreement, but as we've just agreed, it's not essential. And as long as the European Union understand that the Brexit voters, and I trust their Prime Minister in this country, are prepared to leave without a deal if they can't be bothered to do a free trade agreement, then I think we have a chance at success. If the European Union, with help from people in this country, still believe this country is going to buckle and give in, then I trust the negotiations won't work, and I trust that is a misjudgment of the government's position.
And how strong do you think the force is in Westminster, the anti-Brexit force, the EU allies still lurking around? How strong is that now? Are they a real threat?
Well, I think they're much diminished. But clearly all the opposition parties still belong to the Remain faith. You don't ever hear them demanding a stronger Brexit or an earlier Brexit or an easier Brexit. They don't play up the rhetoric against Brexit quite as much because they know they no longer have the votes in the House of Commons to disrupt us in the same way. But I think a lot of them still have Remain hearts. And who knows what they say to their contacts on the continent. But this is a time, please, above all else, when everyone should, in the United Kingdom, should be on the United Kingdom government's side or should keep quiet and allow the United Kingdom government best chance to try and get that free trade agreement exit, which would be preferred to just simply leaving.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last week on Brexit Unlocked, Anne Widdecombe said, "We are nearer to a clean break Brexit than we have ever been." John, what's your position on that? And is WTO still the best way to go?
Yes, I think we are nearer to a clean break Brexit than before because of the voting balance in the House of Commons and the clear commitment of the new government, recently elected on this very issue, really, with a Prime Minister who has stated often that if necessary, he will leave with no deal. It's not his preference, but he's made it very clear he would do that. Now, our previous Prime Minister used to say that, and then she changed her mind at a very crucial point. She watered it all down. And I think from the moment she did that, it was inevitable she wasn't going to get a good deal from the European Union because they saw that she would change her mind and give ground under pressure. So this Prime Minister has to show that he is rock solid on this. And if necessary, we have to leave without that deal. And looking at
And are we ready for a no deal?
Well, of course I think we're ready, yes. And I don't understand why I do understand why they make such heavy weather of it, because they don't want us to do it. But
Exactly.
there is no good reason, in fact, why they should make such heavy weather of it. They say that our borders couldn't possibly cope with it all, and we don't know how to do it. Well, of course we know how to do it. We operate at the moment borders that enforce European tariffs and European rules on products. And it's all done electronically, and it's not done with someone with a cash register at Dover having to check each lorry and take £20 notes off them to pay the import duties or whatever. It's done electronically, and so it will be if we leave without a trade deal with the European Union. There will be a whole range of checks on the electronic manifest for each lorry, as there are today. And if there needs to be a tariff as well, it's just an extra line on the manifest. And the computers of the Treasury, I'm sure, are very good at lopping more money off people when they send things through. They already have to make tax adjustments on VAT and excise duties on trade with Europe. So if there had to be a tariff as well, I can't see that it's much of an added complication for anything other than the computer programmer. So I think we need to be realistic. It's perfectly possible for it to work. And the other great news, as I remember explaining during the referendum campaign to all these very clever Remain people who never seem to have imported anything, is that we actually control the ports that do the imports. Yeah. And so there's no reason for us to mess up the imports. If by any chance the British government after 4 years still hadn't sorted out the electronic paperwork, just let them through. There's no problem.
Yeah, absolutely, that's the spirit.
Yeah, and that will concentrate the mind in the Treasury, because if there's money to raise, I'm sure the Treasury will have a very quick way of raising it. I've never known.
Yeah, they're good at that.
The Treasury finding it difficult to put in the computer program. Immediately a Chancellor has risen to his feet in a budget and announced that there's going to be some kind of new tax. So I'm an optimist on all that. I think it's perfectly possible for it to all work very smoothly. And if by any chance there was a glitch or something that hadn't been properly prepared after all these years of waiting, then all you do is you wave people through and sort it out as quickly as possible because you want the food to come in.
So, John, we'd like to end on a nice, positive, optimistic, flying the flag, patriotic, believing in the spirit of Brexit message. How confident are you that we will get a proper Brexit, that Brexiteers will recognise, and we will not be surrendering on key areas like fishing, state aid and level playing field? How on track are we?
Well, I trust we are on track. The government tells me we are, and I'm egging them on. And like many of your viewers and watchers, I think we can make a huge success of Brexit because I think it's teeming with opportunity. Can I guarantee it? No, of course I can't guarantee it because it depends what we do. Our destiny is in our own hands. We have the power to be an independent government and make our own choices. We won't get them all right, but we only got to get some of them right, and we would be better off than if we had stayed in the European Union. And some of these things are happening already. It was great news this week, which I highlighted on my website, that there's a very major investment going into tomato and sweet pepper growing in this country. Why do we have to import these things from Holland or from Spain? We used to grow far more of our own food here. Let's get on. We're growing much more food locally, good for the environment, good for local employment. Great tasting products will doubtless come to our tables. And so I think we have a big opportunity to get back quite a lot of the lost market share in agricultural areas. And yes, on fishing, absolutely vital that we are that independent coastal state, which we should always have been. And very important that we land most of the fish, if not all of the fish, here in the United Kingdom, and that we have a much bigger fishing industry. Our fishing industry has been shriveled and shrunk by the impact of the common fisheries policy upon it, and it's now a scandal that so much of the natural resource for the United Kingdom is handled through foreign ports and foreign vessels. And I'm afraid they're just going to have to get used to the fact that we are taking back control of our fishery. And then we need to make sure that once the fish is landed in the United Kingdom, we encourage all those processing and packaging and other industries which can add value to the fish, and which may mean that we keep the fish at home to eat in every form from fish pie through to basic fish, or we export the extra products we're able to make. So I want to see plenty of free ports around the country, and a free port shouldn't just be a little patch of land by a port. It can be a virtual free port which extends miles inland and allows freedoms for people to manufacture and transform imported raw materials and semi-manufactures and put some more manufacturing value added in and create many more jobs here. I think there's huge opportunity, and I'm just waiting for the day when we can say, at last, we are a free, independent, sovereign country. At last, we can make our own mind up. At last, we can have those jobs and that natural resource that is properly ours. That is what the British people want. Control of our borders, control of our laws, control of our fish. Surely it's not asking for too much. And this mad idea that all these clever Romanians have, that the fifth or sixth largest economy in the world, and one of the most important ancient democracies that has always been able to modernize and improve, is no longer capable of self-government. I and my colleagues wish to prove them wrong. We are mightily capable of self-government. We are capable of global leadership, and it's been the EU that's been holding us back.
Oh, John, come on! Absolutely. We have been sharing those very same thoughts for 4 years now. Thank you so much for articulating them so perfectly. That is what we need. The passion, the spine, and just the positivity. There are so many opportunities. You're so right about Brexit. I am so excited about getting a good Brexit, and it's all in our grasps. 100 days to go? Is that about it?
About 104 days.
104 days to go. So,
John, you'll have made the day of Brexit watching this, mate. I just want to thank you so much, because it's been difficult to maintain positivity oftentimes throughout this process. But look, you've really put the lead and the pencil of Brexiteers today. Thank you so much for coming on Brexit Unlocked. Your blog is becoming unmissable, the true heartbeat of what's happening within inside the Tory government. It's an unmissable read. And thank you for coming on today so much. Belinda, you got the spine bump, you got the tingles here.
I absolutely did, and it's what people need to hear. You know, after the horrors of COVID, the uncertainty, Project Fear Strike 2, 3, 4, you know, people can get Brexhaustion quite easily. So just to have that injection of what we felt back in 2016, that our country could now achieve, well, being free is there, laid beautifully out by John.
So John Redwood,
we
thank you
mustn't
so much for coming on the show.
steal it from us now. This was our
I'm
vision.
not at the last hurdle, John. No, I agree.
It's going to be all the better for having been so much delayed, because we're going to feel even more positive about it when we finally get there. Because
I feel
we
a
were
second
cheated
party
again
coming on.
with this idea that we have left the European Union, but we're still in its single market and customs union. We always made it crystal clear in the Leave campaign that we were leaving the single market and customs union as well as the EU. And indeed, in those days, Remain used to think that was a threat. And we were saying, is that a promise? That's wonderful.
Yes, exactly.
And then as soon as we vote to leave, Remain turns around and said, oh, well, of course, you're not actually leaving the customs union and single market. Oh, yes, we are. You promised
it's like a
us
pantomime.
that. You told us that was what was going to happen. That's a very important part of the deal. The single market was always more a device for putting us under their control and taking over our lawmaking capabilities and ordering our money around to places we didn't want to spend it in, rather than a free market. So by all means, if we get a free trade agreement, we have an even freer market. But I got news for those Remain people. We're going to have a freer market outside than we ever had inside. And we're going to have a better deal outside, even without a special deal with the EU, than we ever had inside. And that's why the canny majority in this country voted out, and why they still feel completely cheated by people who are sufficiently undemocratic to have spent 4 years trying to stop the popular will having its way.
Oh, John, amazing. It's exactly what I think as well. I mean.
Rousing. I mean, I tried to end the show 3 times, but no, just keep going. You're in your flow.
No,
wow. Well, what can you say about that?
Well, you've left us on a real high, John. It's so inspiring listening to your energy and passion. It's brilliant.
Thank you so
Very
much
good.
for coming on the
Lovely
show,
to talk
John
to you.
Redwood.
Thank you, John. Bye.
Okay, so we've had the voice of reason, the civilised tone of John Redwood, and a neat caveat into our next guest, June Slater. June is a Facebook phenomenon, the voice of the provinces. She's shot to fame with her videos berating David Cameron and berating the Remainers. So June, I know another thing that really gets the goats of Brexiteers is foreign aid. What are they saying about foreign aid out there, June?
Well, they're really angry and annoyed because we seem to be the only country that's got it written into law. So whether we like it or we don't, we have to pay 0.75% of our GDP. Now, Germany pays a similar amount, but Germany has only paid that amount recently. Previously to that, it was 36% less than that, which is a hell of a lot of money. We don't get a choice. Now, unfortunately, Tory spin turns it round and says that this year foreign aid's down, we're contributing less. We're contributing less because our GDP is less. So the percentage remains the same. British people, hundreds of messages, thousands if you count it up over a period in time, want our commitment to sending our foreign aid as a point of law. They want it taken out of law. They use the phrase enshrined. It's enshrined. It makes it sound special. Great Britain giving to all these needy countries. But really, we're quite prepared to give, but not at a set amount. We want it out of law, simple as.
And what kind of things in particular seem to stick in the craw? We hear about the ridiculous ways that money is being spent, but what kind of things really stand out for Brexiteers?
Well, they don't like money going to countries that have space programmes, and they don't like money going to countries that seem to fund what we call vanity projects, and there's quite a lot of them. I mean, there was one story about some very small African nation where they were supposed to be helping school kids be educated, and half the money went on one guy's trip to go out and look at it, where he stayed in a nice hotel. I mean, these are only small things, but it all adds up and it all counts. We want the choice to contribute when we're doing well, not have to contribute at a set amount.
Yeah, and June, the problem is as well, is as it stands, it's so open to abuse. I think the British public would be very happy with foreign aid if we could have like a log of exactly where it went and it didn't go into the hands of despots and dodgy crims. I think we're a very charitable, very giving country. I don't think it's about not wanting to give, but we need a structure that suits and serves British interests as much as it suits and serves developing countries. And I don't understand why no government have championed a manifesto with that, as the British public, I think, are behind a restructuring of foreign aid. Don't you agree? Yeah.
We give more per capita than any other country, including America. We give more per capita. That means more per person. So that means more of taxpayers' money, because the government doesn't have any money. The governments don't manufacture anything. The governments are a set of bureaucrats to help us run our country and run our lives. The only source for money is us, anyone who work paying tax. So therefore, we are sovereign. We give that sovereignty to Parliament. It's there on trust, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of trust right now. So I think we need more transparency with foreign aid.
Okay, June, Anne, I know we spoke yesterday. Another thing that's really missing from the script, and we spoke about this before on Unlocked, and that is the backlog in the NHS and the things like small operations. Now, you get, I know, a lot in your inbox about this. So what kind of things are happening?
Well, it's really blown my socks off, just the scale of the backlog of everything from cancer treatment to facilities for heart patients. Barry from Dover, he's had his stent operation postponed indefinitely. Now, I'm sure when you have stents put in, it's quite serious, that, because you've got fatty arteries. I wouldn't like to be sat waiting for that to happen and not know when it's going to happen. We've got a woman whose daughter has been diagnosed with breast cancer just before lockdown. It's a very sad tale, this one. She's got 5 children, 2 from her sister who died from breast cancer. And this, when it happened, the woman was told she couldn't start treatment because of lockdown. So this woman, the mother of the cancer sufferer, inboxed me despairing, didn't know what to do. So I said, write to your MP, write to councillors. Who's your MP? I'll write to them. So we wrote to the MP. I didn't hear anything for a few weeks because I get a lot of messages, 150 a day. Anyway, she messaged back about 2 weeks ago to say that they decided to reinstate the treatment. Since then, the poor woman's had her breast off and is continuing with treatment. But had they not pushed the issue, this is a woman definitely threatened with a life-shattering disease. Now that's the tipping end of the wedge, where it's real serious stuff. The stent operation. People aren't going to A&E because they don't want to go on their own. They're only allowing one person in. So, for instance, if you want to go in and you're elderly, one woman slept in her car. She's 79 and she slept in her car all night, waiting for the results of her husband going to A&E. This is wrong. This is morally, and it's wrong. Smaller things. We seem to be protecting our GPs better than we're protecting our elderly. Our GPs are seen cushioned behind this screen of they can't touch you, they can't do anything that involves bodily fluids. A 91-year-old man who used to have his ears sringed at the doctors goes every couple of times a year. He needs it. He can hear. He's 91. He lives alone. He's self-sufficient. He's a great guy. He can't have his ears sringed. He can't have his ears sringed because the doctors won't do it because of lockdown. These rules might have changed since this message came in. It's about 10 days ago. I'm not sure. But he's now going deaf because he needs his ears shringing. Another lady, she's 70 years old. She has cortisone injections. It has to be done at the doctors. She can't have the cortisone injections because it's an injection. Anyway, the rules have changed according to a message. She can have them now, but because she's 70, she has to self-isolate for 2 weeks beforehand, before she goes for the injection, and isolate for 2 weeks afterwards. That's a month of isolation for a couple. A husband has to isolate then as well, and he's the designated shopper. So that means they'd have to have shopping brought in just to have an injection for cortisone. We've gone mad. We've gone mad in this country.
All right, Jean. Well, look, it's so great to get a voice like yours on the show, and I want you on the show regularly, every week. You know, you've got the eye and the ear of provinces, and it's really important, I think, to make this not just a conversation about those in the corridors of power, in Brussels, in Strasbourg, in Westminster, but the real issues that affect real people day in, day out.
And from one wonderful June to another, we've got the fantastic June Mummery again with us with her latest fish news for the week. We're going to start, June, with some rumours that Barnier is using the Channel Islands as a bargaining chip against the UK. What do you make of that?
Well, what I make of that, Belinda, is the same thing. You know, it's all could. That's that big word that comes out all of the time. Could, might be. At the end of the day, we have to take back full control, and that includes the English Channel. It's as simple as that. I mean, at the moment, France has 84% of the quota for cod in the English Channel, while Britain only has 9%. So once we leave the EU and take back full control, we will have that fish. That'll be ours. I mean, I sympathise with the French very much, but what they're going to have to do is what we had to do back in the day, is decommission their boats. We chopped up hundreds of our boats, and that is exactly what they'll have to do. They'll have to look at their situation and do exactly what we did. So I looked at that situation, I read it, you know, yet again, I wondered if it was true. I spoke to fishermen. It can't happen, only if our government let it happen. So I emailed my MP yesterday, and it's a simple sentence, and I put that out to everybody out there. It's, "Dear Peter, how are you? The news in the Telegraph this week, hence the English Channel, is it fake? Kind regards, June Mummery." He's already got back to me and put, "Hi June, I'll look into it." Now my MP sits on the Fisheries Committee, so he hasn't heard anything. This is the trouble. Every day there's something different coming out. And it's so good for me to be able to put my voice over on Unlocked, on this kind of media channel, to everybody. Because like June said earlier, the amount of emails I get and messages is incredible. So I don't know, at the end of the day, we go back to the same old story. Strong government with a backbone. We want the English Channel back. I'm afraid the French won't be able to. They can fish in their side, but we will be taking that part of our waters.
Well, another platform apart from Unlock that you use very effectively, June, is of course Twitter. Now you're not afraid, are you, to have a pop at people? I noticed this week you've sunk your fangs into Andrew Bowie MP, the vice chair of the Conservative Party, who announced with some degree of pomposity. And that's that. The Fisheries Bill passes the committee stage, another huge step forward to establish ourselves again as an independent coastal state, and you weren't quite so convinced, were you?
No, I was quite upset about that. I mean, I call him Pike, because he's obviously wet behind you. I mean, I got various messages, and I thought, so I took a look. So that's that. So I answered him, so that's that. So we are taking back full control of our waters and the resource. We will be banning super trawlers. We will be banning electric pulse fishing. That is what taking back control is. That was a silly tweet and absolutely ridiculous. I just can't believe that he would be so naive. And then to actually do a selfie of himself, this is the trouble with politicians. They've taken this as a joke. This is serious stuff. You know, coastal communities are waiting in the aisles to know that they've got a future. There's none of this, oh, this might happen. They try and confuse us with, oh, we will be taken back by our territorial waters. It's just, and a lot of the general public actually believes that. They think once we leave the EU and we take our waters back, that's it, done. We can rebuild. Well, it's not like that. Until we take back full control, and I can't stress it enough, it is the quota. 54% of quota is on flagships. It has to come back to this country for us ever to rebuild our coastal communities. So Andrew Bowie needs to go back and you know, be careful of what he actually puts out there, because that really was a really pathetic tweet.
Strong words, and that's why we love June. I mean, you've got the balls, frankly, to give it to them straight. Since we last spoke on Unlocked, what is the mood in those fishing constituencies, those coastal areas where this is a key issue. It's often downplayed. Oh, it's only 0.1% of the economy, but it's a massive issue in those seas. Since we last spoke, what's the mood? Are you more positive about fishing or less positive?
Well, like I've said, Martin, I haven't got an ear of government. You know, I've worked with them. I've written various strategies. I mean, I'm the co-founder of the Reef Report, which I launched last October in Westminster. I mean, there's nothing that I haven't done for DEFRA and Seafish, but they will not let me sit on any steering groups because I tell the truth. And that is the problem that I have. I've got a wonderful team of people I work with, fishermen, ex-directors of DEFRA even. We sit there and we work for the people. But the mood is good because, like I just said, everybody watched Unlocked. They read Twitter. You've got social media with Facebook too. And they're actually waking up to politics because politics really isn't that hard. Once you sort of fumble through all the big words and all the people that swallow dictionaries, it is grassroots.
That's true, and fish obviously is the litmus test for Brexit. And if Boris compromises right at the end and gives away fishing to try and get a trade deal, how do you think that will fare with the fishermen that you know?
Well, it will be terrible for the fishermen. I mean, absolutely terrible. Coastal communities, Belinda. Coastal communities have a lot of social problems. You've got a lot of alcoholism, drug abuse, loneliness. I mean, loneliness, that's what triggers all these kind of things off. You know, when you look at coastal towns that have lost that industry, they are in such dire straits, I can't tell you. So people like Andrew Bowie, I'd love to get a hold of him and take him round to some that I've been to, places like Fleetwood, Grimsby, Hull, Lowestoft, Great Yarmouth, and just actually look at the difference he could do. I cannot understand these coastal community MPs. Where are they? They should be fighting tooth and nail. We shouldn't have to read this in the Telegraph. You know, there shouldn't even be, or answer that back. So an article comes out from the Telegraph. Why isn't someone counteracting that and putting people's minds at rest? You know, I've been worried about it for the last 2 days. You know, why don't someone...
June, you know, thank God for you, because really, if it wasn't for you, who would be pushing these MPs to even address it? So we can't thank you enough. And obviously, coming onto this show, you give the real and raw story about the fishing communities that you won't see in the mainstream media.
I also think that, can you imagine if we had June Mummery and June Slater? Yes. Getting old, as you said, getting old of some of these MPs, you'd scare the life out of them.
There is something about Junes. There should be a film. There's something about Junes. You're just cracking. Now, I would love to hear, June, your tasty morsel for the week. You know, we're trying to get the nation to fall back in love with fish like mackerel and locally sourced fish around our coast. And it would be great if you could give a tidbit of one of your favourite recipes using British caught locally sourced fish.
Well, I try and eat fish at least twice a week. I mean, I love the stuff, I work with it, and it is healthy. And I thought about the recipes, and I thought, well, it's only fair that I give you recipes that I actually do myself. So I've been making homemade fish fingers sandwiches for years. My kids love them very much. So quite a simple recipe. Get a roll, any type of roll, piece of fish, slice it up, put it in corn flour. That's the best for fish. I added this week turmeric. Couple of teaspoons of that for your joints, mix it all around, get a nice based pan. Rapeseed oil is always the best for fish, I've been told by fishermen, nice and hot. Strips of cod, haddock, just straight in your bun with your gem lettuce. You can have tomato ketchup, I tend to have mayonnaise, and I mix in white wine vinegar and dill this week. And that is just a very, very healthy but an enjoyable fish finger sandwich. Now, for all those people out there that don't like cooking fish and they moan that it stinks, this is an old wives' tale. So I've been told, once you've got a smell in the kitchen of fish, you take your match, you strike it, you let it smoke, and apparently, it takes the smell out. So there's your tip of the day as well. If all else fails, get one of these candles. This one actually is sea salt, would you believe? I have that by the side of the cooker. while I'm cooking.
Great, no more excuses. Everyone get your fish out in the pan. No excuses. Get cracking on the fish. I think that's a good way to end.
And the final guest on today's Brexit Unlocked is Calvin Robinson, a man who I consider a great friend, something of a political brother. We campaigned together during the general election in Nottinghamshire. He stood against Anna Soubry. Hooray! We had a go
Nice
at Anna
one, Calvin.
Soubry. I was in Ashfield. We were neighbouring constituencies. We campaigned and helped each other. Your father met my father. An endearing image of that campaign actually was your dad and my dad having a hug on Beeston High Street shortly before Anna Soubry's campaigners called us fascists. But hey, the ups and downs of politics. And what an up and down week it's been for you, Calvin. You're a person who I think has brilliantly captured the voice of a debate that really needs to be had. And that is, let's start with Brexit. First of all, it was uniformly seen as a white, older, conservative gammon thing. Well, you don't tick any of those boxes. And a lot of people found that quite hard to accept, didn't they? Why is there this huge barrier about black people, ethnic people, call them what you like, being Brexiteers?
First of all, thank you for having me on. Good to see you, Martin and Belinda, again. I struggle with this, I really do. Throughout the whole of the referendum campaign, people were cornering me and putting me in boxes because of the colour of my skin. And I'm not the kind of person that goes around saying, I'm a black conservative or anything like that, because I just happen to be black. It's just a part of my identity. It isn't the core of my identity. But that seems to upset people. And they come to me and say, but you're associating with these people. They're all racist. They're all xenophobes, right? How can you do this? You're letting your side down. And I was like, well, first of all, my side is Great Britain. I'm not letting it down. I'm fighting for it. But secondly, these people aren't racists and they're not xenophobic. I talked a lot about immigration during the referendum because I think that is the key element that really upsets people, in that they see that word as so toxic and so taboo. And we're not allowed to talk about it anymore. And that's why I want to talk about it all the more, because I think that, we need to address it. I actually fought for more immigration, and most people didn't want to hear it because as soon as I mentioned the word, they shut down. But if you were to mention it, Martin, or if you were to mention it, Belinda, I've seen on many occasions, you've been accused of being racist just for mentioning that word, which is why I stand up and say, hopefully people will at least give me the benefit of the doubt because I'm brown, and they'll hear out the rest of the sentence before shutting me down. But, my argument was, look, we need more immigration because as a school teacher, I found that we couldn't recruit any teachers in the UK. We had a really hard time getting teachers from Australia. And I've noticed, we need more nurses from Canada and doctors from India and all these things. And it's difficult because the system that we have for immigration is discriminatory, in that if you're from the EU, welcome aboard, it's all good. But if you're not, no, the door's closed. And to me, that's racist and wrong. So I think we need more immigration of skilled professionals from different countries that are not part of the EU bloc. That was my whole argument. From my family's perspective, my father's side came to this country in Windrush period. They came over here when skilled labor was needed, and the government said, West Indies, come over, we need your help, please come over. And they did, and my family came over, and the government made it easy for relatives of people that came over to join them, but they didn't leave the doors open forever. As soon as the country got the help that it needed, those doors were closed again. Rightly so, the floodgates weren't left open for the system to be abused. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with controlling your borders. And it's not racist to suggest that that is a problem. So I'm going to keep talking about this until people accept it. But yes, the argument was always that, you must be a Bounty or an Oreo or all of these things that suggest I'm black on the outside and white on the inside.
And I noticed the Remain campaign were trying to almost erase ethnic minorities out of the debate. It was never brought up on any serious debates where, your voice, it's almost like you weren't allowed one. And I'm so pleased that you came today on this show, because it hasn't been talked about, and who knows what future decisions, referendums we're going to have in this country that involve ethnic minorities breaking away from that sort of left-wing pro-EU box that you're all forced into by the sort of white saviour liberal types. And I remember seeing you on the campaign. It was fantastic. You've always had such character and charisma, which we saw this week. Oh my gosh, Calvin, on Good Morning Britain, you were incredible against a barrage of just pro-BLM rhetoric. You really stood your ground, and you got so much abuse for challenging Black Lives Matter and the political movement. I'm so impressed. You've got a huge amount of people rallying for you in support, but how has it been? How has the abuse and trolling and racist language of those that don't agree with your opinion on Black Lives Matter, how has it affected you?
It's been interesting, it really has, because of course I've had a lot of this abuse in the past, but A, being a conservative, or B, being a Brexiteer, and from the black communities, but also from teaching communities. As a teacher, you know, they tend to be about 80% of them are Remain voters and 80% of them are left-leaning. So just to have a different voice, just to have a different opinion can be problematic. But the abuse has been interesting because there's been so much of it, and it's been so targeted. Personally, I've just, you know, tried to keep a step upper lip and let it be water off a duck's back. But it's my family members that, you know, get really upset, and that's what upsets me, seeing them getting upset for me. And it shouldn't be the case that I shouldn't be attacked based on the way I look or the way I speak or, you know, the style of my hair. I'm happy for people to come for me on my views and opinions and debate me and say why I might be wrong, because I'm not always right. Absolutely. There's many things I might be wrong on, and I'd love to hear why. And that's never the case. It's always, you know, your hair is, how dare you have an afro? You're not one of us. You're not part of our club. Or, you know, oh, you're just blackish. You're not quite black. It's actually atrocious. And I don't know how to debate that, because those are my immutable characteristics. I can't change the color of my skin.
Yeah.
Can I just interject here, because I found this really difficult this week, and you know, I got involved in your Twitter feed. What struck me as astonishing was that the most vociferous and poisonous abuse towards you seemed to come from other black people. Why is it that there's such a venomous attack on black people who speak out against this hive mind? What's it about? Can you please help me here as a slightly awkward white bloke who just doesn't understand this at all?
I mean, I'll try, because I'm struggling to understand it myself. But what I seem to see is that the whole Black Lives Matter movement isn't really fighting for black lives. They don't really think that Black Lives Matter. You know, if they thought that, they would celebrate diversity of thought and opinion. They would celebrate equality in the sense that having people with a broad range of views. We would want black people from the right and black people from the left and all the spectrum in between. That would be what they were fighting for, but they're not. What they want is more faces that look like them and sound like them. And that's because it's a system that's divisive. What they want to do is break down our way of life and rebuild it in their own Marxist image. That's what I think that Black Lives Matter is all about, which is why I was speaking up against it. And, you know, I said they're divisive. I said they're stoking racial tensions. And to prove me wrong, what did they do? Well, they caused division and assaulted me racially. So they're just proving my point, really. And that, you know, on the one hand, they're standing up saying we're anti-racists. On the other hand, they're hurling racial abuse at me. And they don't see the irony of their ways. I'm out here fighting against racism. I think, you know, in this country, we're not quite meritocratic yet. There is a way to go, but we have made a lot of progress, and we need to celebrate that. You know, when I mentioned my grandfather came over during Windrush, he had a really difficult time in this country, but my father had less of a difficult time, and I had even less of a difficult time. We made a lot of progress over the years. We need to celebrate that and then work on fixing what the problems that still remain.
Well, Calvin, you're a teacher, and you know, my worry is that this sort of Black Lives Matter, critical race theory is going to start being taught, or I think it already is, being taught in our classrooms, and parents are completely unaware of it. And I've had experience of it in my daughter's school and had to write to the headmistress because my daughter phoned me up very upset and saying, you know, I didn't realise that only white people could be racist, and she's in a very ethnically diverse group in her classroom, and it changed the relationship between her and her classmates. There was sort of added suspicion and the othering. It was othering of different friendship groups, and children are colourblind, you know, they're not supposed to see that sort of stuff. What would you do to tackle that, or what advice would you give to parents to get on top of whether their school is teaching their children those particular political ideologies?
Yeah, absolutely, Belinda. I've heard from so many schools, from both parents and teachers, that are worried about this, because we are seeing a lot of, you know, young white children upset because they didn't know they were racist. They're being told that they are, and young black kids who are being suspicious of other races now because they're told that they're being oppressed and held back based on the color of their skin. So I've been part of a movement called Don't Divide Us, which is trying to flip this on its head and say, actually, let's stop looking at the things that are separating us and start focusing on the things that bring us together. You know, we're all in this together. We're all British. Let's celebrate our British values, for one. You know, rule of law, democracy, the family unit at the center of the community. Let's focus on serving each other, our duty towards our community, our duty towards our country. And we don't have to separate each other based on our skin color.
The best enemy to identity politics is unity, is to come together. And I think Don't Divide Us is a fantastic platform for that. Don't you think, Martin?
I do, and I know we were having chats earlier this week. You know, Lawrence Fox and you and myself were together. We've been talking about something feels like it's in the air. And I agree with you. I think that it's time for a fight back against this. We've seen in America, Donald Trump's kind of gone nuclear on this, right? Now he's banning critical race theory. He's introducing patriotic education, pro-American education, so Americans can unite under their flag. Calvin, is that something that could work in the UK? And what are the positive things when we talk about here to fight back against this poison?
Well, absolutely. It would be fantastic to see our leadership in this country do the same as what Trump's doing in America, saying that, you know, if you're going to spread division, we're going to shut it down. And instead of doing that, we want to promote unity. We want to promote patriotism. And that's not a dirty word. That's okay. You know, like I say, the stable family, private property, personal freedoms, democracy, all of these things aren't universal around the world, but we have them here and we should be proud of them. And they're things that bring us together. We could celebrate, we could sing the national anthem together. We can say the Lord's Prayer together. All of these things that have been disregarded as kind of, again, taboo. Anything that we have that brings us together has been thrown away because we want to be seen as inclusive. Well, inclusivity isn't about watering down your values and taking on other people's values. It's about celebrating your values with other people and bringing them into the fold.
Yeah, absolutely. And Calvin, you'll be far too young to remember this, but there was a time where the BBC, at the strike of midnight, played God Save the Queen to the nation just before beddy buys and a cup of hot milk. You know, it was amazing how it's morphed into something else, which is another subject entirely. But, you know, that was the kind of you know, beautiful gesture to the people. Come, unite underneath the flag, who we are, the things we love, whatever race, colour, creed. It was a beautiful thing. It's changed dramatically, and unless we fight back, I worry that we're going to end up a deeply divided country. Unemployment might start kicking in. When furlough ends, you're going to have more people on the street. Where is that division going to lead? Just to more conflict.
Although I should point out that we did ourselves do a rousing rendition of Land of Hope and Glory live on the radio this week, Calvin.
I saw that. Was beautiful.
You, myself and Lawrence Fox, a spontaneous eruption of patriotism. And that's why I love talking to you, Calvin, because you're a solutions guy. You're a positive guy, despite all the aggro you get, the poisonous, vile aggro and abuse you get. How do you stay so positive? What gives you that? Because I mean, I think I was more upset than you.
Well, you know, I genuinely believe that this is a fantastic place to live. I think this is the best country in the world. It is diverse, it's inclusive, it's tolerant of people of other faiths and none. And not many places are as great as Great Britain. And I want to keep shouting that from the rooftops until people realize it again and stop being ashamed of who we are and stop being a little bit proud.
Oh, Calvin, we love you. That's fantastic. What a way to end.
Calvin, thank you so much for coming on the show. And as you said, Belinda, what a great, upbeat, patriotic way to end this episode of Brexit Unlocked. A huge variety of guests today. We've had June Mummery threatening to get hold of MPs. We've had June Slater just threatening to get hold of anyone, which is brilliant. We love June Slater. We want her on every week. John Redwood, the voice of reason.
Yeah, wisdom and reason and common sense, and it's the platform that we are going to use every Friday to have fantastic guests like you on. You have all been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on.
Tune in again next Friday for the next episode of Brexit Unlocked. Thank you and take care.